So he has a newsletter that he puts out called Crossing Currents, which his ministry is called Cross Winds. And we're going to look, he put together 10 things that are happening in our culture. And we're going to look at them. Now, I know from tons and tons of teaching and preaching and so forth that when I give you something to read and I'm speaking, I know that over half of you are going to read and not listen to me. So I'm going to ask you not to do that for a minute. And just to come look at me for a second. I was in a short conversation 20 years ago when we lived on Sutherland Place. There was a lady in our doorway, and she was saying that she believed that all religions were just sort of doing the same thing, that they were all trying to help people. They all were providing a decent path of morality, and they all were loving, and that we all ought to get along, and that every single religion, if the people were faithful to that they would all go to heaven. Well, now, those of you who know me, I have a real combative Clint Eastwood side that I have to keep as best as possible tucked in all the time, or I would have 1,000 life sentences in jail. Is that how much I have inside of me? But, so, it was all I could do at the door to just Clint, go sit over in the chair. Because this was a family friend. And so I set Clint Eastwood aside, but the crashing thing that came to me, which is what I want to address really through Bob's 10 points, is what does that say about Jesus? Because for me it all became very personal. So let me see if I understand this right. If everybody can get to heaven, if everybody's all right, then what happens in my head and mine is, well, what does that do about Jesus? Because for me it's personal. See, I think Jesus, as the Bible says, he came from heaven and died on a cross for me. So if he didn't need to do that, if all we got to do is just follow some code or path of morality that any religion would put forth, then my crashing emotion as she was leaving was that I was sad because it made me think she doesn't know Jesus. If she knew Jesus, she wouldn't dare say that you can get to heaven 1,000 other ways, because it so minimizes his death that it's catastrophically emotional to me. Because for me, Christianity is deeply personal. It's not a religion to argue. It's not a moral code to combat against others. I don't look at Christianity and the history of it that we've made 1 million mistakes. Christianity has, but so has people who follow any other religion made 1 million mistakes. Come on. It's not just Christianity that's made mistakes. But I don't follow Christianity. Jesus was the one that walked in my bedroom at 17 and saved me. Christianity didn't save me. Jesus did. So when that lady is saying there's 1,000 ways to heaven, I'm going, no, there can't be. There can't be 1,000 ways to heaven. If there is, then Jesus' death is silly. It's a waste. It's an emotional waste. It's a spiritual waste. It's a preaching waste. Why even talk about it? Why not just talk about getting our lives together? If all you need to do to go to heaven is be a Girl Scout or a Boy Scout in morality and have a decent view of humanity and just want peace among brothers and sisters all over the world, if that's all you need to do to go to heaven, then Jesus didn't need to come. He just didn't need to come. But he came. And for me, Bob's 10 points from an apologetic point of view, are arguable for sure. And I'm going to bring up some issues. But for me, as we read through these 10, and we'll scoot right through them, they're personal. They're an affront to me. I don't like it. It makes me frustrated that people would so minimize Jesus. It makes me crazy. Because in my mind, the effort that's going all over America is to do exactly that, to minimize Jesus. And in the meantime, Christianity is getting plenty of shots. I don't even mind those shots. Let them shoot at Christianity, but don't shoot at Jesus. You're going to get me all upset. I'm going to get personal about it. I'm going to talk to you about it. We're going to get this squared away, because you don't stand in my doorstep and say there's 1,000 ways to heaven. Not in my doorstep. Now, I was nice that day, but I didn't feel like being nice. I felt like being like a relative that just had their relative slammed. And I'm going to rise up and say, don't talk about my family that way. So let's get our newsletters out and plow through here a little bit. I know my kids who are here, they're going to say after service, off in some corner, who was it? So, but, okay, we're on the second page. Top 10 Spiritual Truth Shifts by the one and only Bob Waldrop. And if you don't know Bob, you can find him on YouTube. I'm kidding. But the number one says, God doesn't exist, God isn't real, or God is dead. I know I don't say that word right. Atheism, or the belief there is no God, continues to increase. A 2007 Gallup poll found that 6% of Americans do not believe God exists, and 8% are not sure if God exists. Then it goes on to say in all the statistics. And we're not going to read every statistic that Bob put out. You can read it later, but don't read it now. C.S. Lewis said, and I love this argument, if there is no God, if we're just biological creatures, then why do we have morality? It's a great point by C.S. Lewis. It's an arguable point in his books, Mere Christianity. In other words, you can go to any culture in the world and they're going to have morality. If they've never heard of Jesus, never heard of Buddha, never heard of Mohammed, it doesn't matter. They got morality. If you've seen the movie, No Country for Old Men, if you haven't seen it, I wouldn't see it if you don't like a bloody movie. It's a boy movie. I loved it. But in that bloody movie, the psycho killer, who is so cold and calculated, quote, has his own sense of principles and morality. Very interesting. So even in the most demented mind, there's a division of what's right and what's wrong. And C.S. Lewis's argument is, why does every human being on the earth, atheist or not, have a sense of right and wrong? You can go to any atheist and ask them, well, what's right and what's wrong on this situation, and they'll have an opinion. You can't escape right and wrongness, morality. So if we're just biological, why do we have an inner conscious of right and wrong? It's a good argument to show that there's more than just biology at stake.